Hello and welcome to The Voluntarist. If you're a new listener, don't forget to go check out the other videos on this channel when you're done with this one. You know who I'm talking to. Anyways, the point of this video is to discuss feminism. And I never wanted to make a video on this topic, but I decided that it's time to just get it over with and do it. Feminism is such a pressing issue and such a vocal social movement, especially on college campuses and in the workplace. I decided that I should just explain what I think about it and give the pros and the cons as far as I can see. It's purely opinion. I'm going to bring examples from the internet and abroad of things that I have seen and read to help you understand where my opinion is coming from. I'm not telling you what you should think about feminism. I'm just trying to help you understand what I think and why. Oh yeah, so the first part of the video is going to be what I don't like about feminism. And the second part of the video will be what I do like about feminism. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So my first problem with feminism, and I apologize if you hear clicking. I'm just having to switch between different resources so I can do this video. I'm not doing it with a script, so there will be clicking. So my first problem with feminism is that there is rampant misrepresentation and fabrication of data. And there is an article, which I've got some screenshots of, written by Christina Hoff Sommers. I encourage you to go check it out because these screenshots don't show her entire explanation. But she is a feminist intellectual who spent a long time in feminist academia until she kind of got ostracized for criticizing the movement, which is kind of what happens to people who criticize feminism, which is another problem that I have with feminism. But, and I'll get into that in just a second. But she has compiled 6 myths that are routinely repeated in the feminist movement. And the first one here is that women are half of the world's population, working 2/3 of the world's working hours, receiving 10% of the world's income, and owning less than 1% of the world's property. And it turns out that this statistic, or these statistics, because there's actually a lot of statistics in that one sentence, are completely made up by some person working at the UN who wanted to bring attention to gender inequality. And while that's a noble goal, the ends do not justify the means. You don't have a right to completely fabricate some made-up statistic and lie about reality. Okay, that's not an ethical option. And when you think about it, it's just hurting people suffering from real inequality. And inequality is not necessarily bad. For instance, in capitalist nations, the inequality may be increased, but the people at the bottom still have it better off than the places where there is no capitalism, or very limited free trade. So inequality is not necessarily an evil in and of itself, but in the places of the world where real gender discrimination exists and people are actually getting crapped on just because of their sex or their race or whatever the case may be, making up statistics like this causes people to just kind of, I mean, once they figure out that it's a lie, they just kind of turn their nose up at the problem, like, oh, you lied about it? Well, that's cool. I'm going to go do something else then instead of wasting my time dealing with people who make stuff up. I mean, it's kind of, it's a reasonable reaction to something when you find out someone's lying to you about something. So, I mean, like I say again, I'm not trying to tell you what to think about feminism. I am only trying to explain why I think what I do about feminism. And myth number 2, and I promise not to spend that long on each one because this is going to be a long video if I do that. But myth number 2 is between 100,000, 300,000 girls are oppressed into sexual slavery each year. And these are exaggerated statistics that are misrepresented. And then we've got, in the United States, 22% to 35% of women who visit hospital emergency rooms do so because of domestic violence. Apparently, it's exaggerated. And then we've got the 1 in 5 college women will be sexually assaulted. And Christina Hoff Sommers has spoken at great length on many, many occasions about the methods by which the statistic was gathered, like the questions on the surveys, and what they classify as sexual assault. So I mean, you can do more reading on that if you want, but I'm fairly certain that the 1 in 5 statistic is not accurate. It's bloated. And the fifth myth is something that I've already talked about on this channel, and that's the gender pay gap, something like 77 cents on the dollar. Luckily, I already made a video on it, so the link to that will be in the description. Go watch it. But to briefly summarize, the 77 cents on the dollar is just an incredibly misleading statistic that feminists like to throw around. Turns out that there is a gap somewhere between 4 and 7 cents on the dollar difference between male and female when you account for as many variables as the CONSAD researchers could, anyways. And even then, they say that the remaining difference may not be contributable to discrimination in the workplace. It could still be contributable to individual choices that they can't control for. But and then the sixth myth is that men are the privileged sex, and this is Christina Hoff Sommers trying to argue that in the modern world, men and women both have privileges and disadvantages in life, and it's unhealthy to just inherently assume that an individual just has it easier than everyone else just 'cause penis or just 'cause vagina. You know, it's that's not really healthy for interpersonal interactions between people of different sexes. And I'm inclined to agree with that. You can agree or disagree, but to just say that men are privileged, more privileged than women, period, kind of overlooks all of the nuances of, you know, being a man in the modern world versus being a woman in the modern world. So take that as you will. Moving on. My second big problem with feminism is that they inconsistently apply their own ideology. For instance, there was a report done in the University of Michigan Law School that showed that women receive much more lenient sentencing than men for the same crime. So that's a problem. That's if the mission of feminism is to advocate for equality of the sexes, then it would make sense that feminism should speak out against the lenient sentencing of women, because that's inequality. They're getting off easy for their crimes. Or they could also argue that men are being punished too harshly. Unfortunately, I haven't heard feminists say these things, not publicly. I haven't read any kind of feminist response saying that, you know, women deserve longer jail times, or I mean, wouldn't that be the weirdest thing if a feminist were to say that? They'd be gone. They would be no longer a part of the movement. None of the other feminists would want anything to have to do with them. But this is a case of real inequality, real discrimination in the court system, in the law, in the way the law is applied to people. And feminists seem oddly quiet about the whole thing. Also, there are more women in college than men. The enrollment rates of women just crush men's enrollment rates. They just blow men out of the water. And this has led to this inequality, keyword inequality. There are more women in college than men. And feminists aren't going around saying, we need to recruit more men to college. College in general. You don't really see the same effort or same advocacy trying to get men to enroll at higher rates comparable to that of women. Also, and this is a fairly new phenomena, women in their 20s are actually earning more than men of comparable age. Not by much, but they are earning more on average. And again, the on average thing is a load of BS. But to compare that to the raw wage gap, which feminists like to throw around, which is the 77% thing, this shows that women as a raw average in their 20s earn more than men as a raw average in their 20s. And this, of course, drops steeply when they start getting to like child having age, where they start a family and they drop out of the workforce, or they switch to more enjoyable part-time work, fewer hours, safer location, safer work environment, more benefits, lower pay, whatever. When they get about to the age where they need to start a family, that's when the pay drops. That's when they make personal decisions to do things that will result in lower pay altogether, as a raw average. So my third big problem with feminism is this idea that disagreeing with feminism is harassment. And you might be shaking your head like, no, that's ridiculous. That doesn't happen. It happens. I have video footage of it, which I'm about to share with you, these documented events. This first clip that I'm going to share is Anita Sarkeesian, who is infamous in her own right for Gamergate and all that stuff. But she went to the UN and actually made the argument that people calling her a liar was harassment. Maybe the way they were doing it was not very tactful, but if someone calls you a liar because they believe that you have fabricated information and you're actually lying about stuff, that's not only is that shouldn't be considered criminal harassment, that should be protected. Calling liars out on their lies is a very important function of free speech. So for her to go to the UN and try to make the case that essentially what she's doing is she is a feminist who doesn't like to be called a liar, doesn't like people disagreeing with her politically, and essentially wants that to be classified as criminal harassment. But anyways, I'll play the clip so you know that this actually happened.
I think it's important to recognize that harassment is, as someone had mentioned, it's not just what is legal and illegal, right? Harassment is threats of violence, but it's also the day-to-day grind of you're a liar, you suck.
Now, in Canada, the whole criminal harassment thing got really out of hand. I'll just play the clip because she explains it pretty well.
The near completion of a very interesting and probably very important case is happening here at Old City Hall today. It's the so-called Twitter case where a man named Greg Elliott is accused of criminal harassment via Twitter by now two, originally it was three, young women. Basically what he did was disagree politically with these young women. He didn't call them names, he didn't, sexually harass them or anything. He just disagreed with some of their politics, particularly their contention that it was okay to publicly shame a young man up north who had made what's called a face punch game. The guy's name is Bendel and Spur, and he'd made this video game where you punched the face of a feminist blogger. That was the game.
So this guy did nothing more than disagree. No insults, no names, just disagreement. He was arrested, lost his job, was released from jail on the terms that he wasn't allowed to access the internet, basically. And eventually, lucky for him and everyone in Canada, the charges were all dropped, and it sets a good precedence because nothing he did could be construed as harassment. So this story had a good ending, but still, it makes you wonder what kind of ideology makes it possible to jail someone, however temporarily, for disagreeing with you. Again, I'm just trying to communicate the reasons why I have a hard time trusting feminism. And we are still going. My fourth big problem with feminism is shaming women for not associating with the modern feminist movement. Believe it or not, some women are not feminists. I know feminism tries to portray itself as the savior of women and the single movement that's responsible for every single right or privilege that women enjoy today. But as true or untrue as that might be, modern women have disagreements with the modern feminist movement. But I'm not going to sit here and talk about it because that's not really my place to talk about women disagreeing with feminism. I can talk about all day long my disagreements with feminism, but here is Julie Borowski to just give a short little explanation for why she, as an individual, has been disenchanted by feminism.
Now, according to some online feminists, women who do not identify as feminist have internalized misogyny. We hate ourselves, but we're too brainwashed by the patriarchy to realize it. Or we just want approval from men. Or we must be against equality because we must be opposed to the definition written by its supporters. Or maybe it's because we judge the feminist movement by its actions and not just what dictionary.com says it is. Does it live up to that definition? Feminism has never really appealed to me. I've never felt that it represented me. No, the definition doesn't say anything about victimization or entitlement mentality or man-hating, but I've seen enough of that in feminist circles to know that I don't really want to be associated with that label.
So Julie has seen conversations between people claiming to be feminists, and she doesn't like their attitude, doesn't like what they talk about, disagrees with them, and has decided based on that feminism is not for her. Yet there are some feminists who would say that Julie is a bad person, or that Julie doesn't care about equality or that stuff. And if you go and watch the rest of this video, I linked it in the description, she says that she does care about equality. She just doesn't like the way feminists are going about achieving equality, or their attitudes towards men, or their attitudes towards, trying to control the thoughts and opinions of other women like Julie. So just food for thought. So my fifth big problem with feminism, which is actually pretty darn similar to number 2, is that it tends to shame men from talking about men's issues because women's issues are more important. And you could say, that can't happen because feminism is about equality. I read that on dictionary.com, and it's kind of like Julie said in her video. It is the actions of the people who call themselves feminists that determine what the movement is. Dictionary.com or Google search or Wikipedia can say all they want, whatever. But movements are judged by the actions of their members, which is one reason why Black Lives Matter is having such a rough go of it at the moment. But I just want to play this clip from this old show that I found, which kind of shows what I mean by this. Just a little bit of context before the video. they have on this guy who founded the first men's shelter in the United States for battered men. And to some that might sound strange. You've heard of battered women's shelter. Well, this guy founded the first battered men's shelter. And he's on the show talking about it. It's strange because here he is. The discussion is about protecting men, giving men a place to go when their wives or their husbands, I guess, gay marriage wasn't legal at this time, or their partners, I guess would be a better word for it. At this time, I think it was like 1991 or 1992. But giving men a place to go when their home becomes violent, when they basically have to go and like hide out in their car away from their partner, and they're having this conversation, or at least that's the subject, and these feminists come in and try to defend the actions of the women. They say, well, women have been beaten for years, and historically women have been subjected to violence in the home, and they try to sympathize with the women beating their husbands, and it just totally misses the mark. If this is about equality, if this is about really caring about human beings as individuals, then it shouldn't matter who's hitting whom. What matters is if someone's being oppressed, if someone is being subjected to physical violence and they're trapped in a situation and they don't know where to go, who to turn to, who to go to for help, then you got to be there for them. But anyways, watch how the feminist ideology just totally derails this conversation about men's issues.
There's been a tremendous rise of women's violence against men from 1985 to 1991, and we here at Rolanda are always concerned about violent family situations, and that's why we thought it was important to do this story. I like the points that we've been making. It doesn't matter who's violent. If your home is violent, then we've got help. Gilliland, he founded the very first one, the very first shelter for men in the United States.
I'm known as a man that demands nothing more than equality and the same continuum of treatment for every victim of domestic abuse. I don't care if it's a man or a woman.
I have a statement. I'm not condoning this at all, but I have to be sympathetic to the women because women have been battered for centuries, and also murdered.
Who gets battered?
Again, I'm not condoning it. I'm not. I'm really not. I'm just saying that me as a woman, I have to be a little bit more sympathetic to my...
What difference does it make who gets battered or slapped, whether it's a male or a female? Because it is a serious thing.
Relationship.
I think it's important to put things into some kind of perspective. Domestic violence is about power and control. It's about a relationship where there's a whole pattern about trying to maintain power and control, very much like racism in our country. You know, those of us who are white are born into a kind of privilege just by the color of our skin, and we think that gives us a right to power. And men who batter women are born into this country thinking because they're born male, they have a right to have power over.
How about good job, or I'm really happy that abused men are able to have a place to go now, or this brings us one step closer to gender equality in terms of the resources available to battered spouses. No, none of that. Just goes straight for the, well, women have it worse than men still, so screw you. I mean, like, what? Wrapping up the problems portion of this video, feminism in practice is a collectivist ideology. It is bankrupt of individualism. And I know it's supposed to encourage women to be themselves, to not worry about stereotypes, and to just be who they want to be and not worry about what anyone else thinks. But in practice, it imposes its own social regulations on women. If a woman is too much like a stereotype, there is feminist backlash, and then it kind of groups all women into this expected hive mind. Like, the feminists that I do know are really upset when other women aren't feminists, because feminism robs women of their individuality. They're not allowed to think for themselves. So non-feminist women are despised by feminists. It's like Julie said, they've got this internalized misogyny, or they don't care about equality, or how could you betray your own gender kind of stuff. And as a rugged individualist, which is just kind of part of being a voluntarist, I have a really hard time finding places where I can agree with feminism, because everything it does is centered on this collective mindset. And just lastly, in closing, feminism preaches victimhood, essentially. I mean, just that's the long and the short of it. It teaches women that men are predators. It teaches them to be scared of men, that their problems are the result of a patriarchy. Got to be scared when they walk alone at night. All of these issues. I mean, women should be scared when they walk alone at night. Anyone should be scared when they walk alone at night, especially men. If I've got some crime stats I could throw up here. I wasn't planning to, because I found them irrelevant as I was planning out the video. But men are the victims of violent crime at a higher rate than women. I'm not sure if that's applicable right now, but I felt like saying that anyways. But I just want to show some video clips of feminists. This is kind of what you get if you buy wholeheartedly into the ideology of feminism. These people have become unable to communicate using their words, and instead result to playing the victim or screaming. And this is, I mean, think what you will. These are the reasons why I have problems with feminism and the way that it affects people and the way they interact with one another.
Oh my God, I believe in equal rights! Oh my God, I believe that! I don't believe in equal rights. Homophobia shouldn't be allowed!
What my name?
Yeah, sure.
It's humongous.
Okay. You just abused a woman! You just abused a woman, and you have the audacity! You have the audacity to say that girls matter? How dare you! How dare you, you disgusting person! No uterus, no right to talk about it. Understand me, motherfucker?
I'm listening to you.
No, I don't give a shit.
Okay, so now for all that bad and all that crazy, I did say that there were some things that I did admire about feminism. So, let me just go through that briefly, because I realize that this is a very long video at this point. Okay. Equality, though it shouldn't be mandated by the state, is a valid consumer preference, like anything else. So I actually think it's admirable that people are advocating for their preferences on the free market of ideas. You know, granted that some feminists are trying to censor the free market of ideas by whatever means necessary, by imprisoning people who disagree with them. I do find it admirable that they are advocating for their preferences. It's kind of like the way that I can think about this is people like what they like. There's really no other way to put it. You have your arbitrary preferences. I have my arbitrary preferences. There are people, lots of people, not just feminists, who care about equality, and they want to make sure that when businesses employ people, they're doing it fairly. Everyone's getting paid fairly. They're not being abused. Their working conditions are okay. And feminism and groups like it that do advocate for good working conditions, better pay, whatever. There's a lot of merit to that. It's helping bring these preferences of people in the marketplace to the attention of employers and other consumers so that they can be more informed about who to give their business to or not. Unfortunately, a lot of this is futile because of the state and the power it gives to certain corporations to write their own rules and stuff like that and avoid competition. But still, this is admirable, and I will give kudos where kudos are due. And then there are a great deal of feminists which oppose the crazy people that I've pulled off of the internet to demonstrate my problems with feminism on the whole. So, like I said, these crazies that I've pulled off the internet are just to help you understand how I've been jaded by people claiming to be feminism. They're not to dissuade you in any way. Like I said, I'm just explaining my opinion. And then the feminists that I know do believe that men and women should receive equal sentencing for the same crime. They don't spread false information. They won't accuse you of harassment for disagreeing with them, and they welcome honest conversation and debate. I know a few of them personally, but they are underrepresented on the internet. They are what I hope amounts to the silent majority among feminists, and if this is the case, they desperately need to regain control of their ideology from the whack jobs that are constantly making the headlines. Christina Hoff Sommers presented the branch of feminism she calls freedom feminism, which I actually find to be quite reasonable, because it is a more individualist-oriented branch of feminism. It says, live and let live, and focus on equality under the law. Namely, making sure that laws don't discriminate one way or the other, and then letting social problems work themselves out. I mean, you can take an active role in sorting the social problems out. That's perfectly fine, but leave the state out of it. And I find that to be extremely admirable. Anyone who has the cojones to go out and advocate for what they believe in and not run to government to do it for them by force, anyone who's willing to do that for a cause they believe in gets my kudos. So kudos are due, and I'm giving them to Christina Hoff Sommers for her branch of feminism and freedom feminism. In fact, I've linked that video in the description if you want to see one of her lectures where she explains what freedom feminism is. I hope I haven't mischaracterized it too much. It's been a while since I saw that video, but that is my impression of what freedom feminism is. Yeah, so those are some pretty strong points in favor of feminism. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information other than that one video where Christina Hoff Sommers, she is an example of a feminist trying to save feminism from itself, because she cares about equality, real equality, and she wants to make sure that the movement that she has dedicated a lot of her time and energy to doesn't get hijacked by nut jobs, essentially. Feminism needs more people like Christina Hoff Sommers to reorient it back to sanity. I just wanted to make this video to kind of throw all of this out there, my stance on feminism as a whole, why I've been jaded away from it. Like I said, everything is linked down in the description, so you can go and do some research on your own. The whack job videos are not linked just because A, I got lazy, and B, this is pretty much all the good stuff from them. So yeah, so this video is already long enough, so I'm going to stop rambling, and thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a thumbs up. If you thought it was informative, please also leave a thumbs up. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to dislike it, but that's just kind of the nature of this kind of thing. And feminist videos are also really popular, so I might get some extra traffic on this video, maybe some extra heat, but whatever. Don't care. This is what I think and why I think it. So if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation, or you want to correct something that I said, or just talk about it, or debate, argue, whatever, feel free to leave a comment down below. Just be polite about it. If you're an a-hole, then I probably won't reply. Or I might be an a-hole right back. But I try not to do that, so don't tempt me. Alright, thanks for watching one more time, and I'll see you in the next one.